Ready for a deep dive? Today, we're all about competitive advantage. What makes companies stand out? Not just get by, but really thrive.
Yeah, exactly.
And to help us crack this, we're going way back to 1995
Hmm.
with this article, uh, Looking Inside for Competitive Advantage
Right.
by J.B. Barney from the Academy of Management Executive.
There's a good one?
Now, this isn't just going to be like your typical SWOT analysis breakdown. We're going deeper.
Oh, way deep.
Yeah, we're going beyond just looking at, the market or competitors.
Right, right.
It's about what's inside a company that gives them a real edge.
Exactly. Those internal resources and capabilities, that's where the real secret weapon is.
So, I think we all know SWOT, right?
Mhm.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Sure.
This is about going a step further and actually understanding how those internal strengths
Yeah.
actually turn into a real advantage in the market.
Yeah.
So where do we even start with this?
Well, Barney gives us a really clear framework, 4 key questions that you can use to analyze any business. And the first one is the question of value. It's not enough to just say, oh, this is a strength. You have to ask, does this strength help the company take advantage of opportunities or maybe, deal with threats in their environment? Does it really matter?
So it's kind of like you could have the best ukulele player in the world,
Uh-huh.
but if you're running a cybersecurity firm,
Right.
that's not really going to help you much.
Exactly. It's got to be relevant. And Barney gives some great examples, like look at Sony and their mastery of miniaturization.
Oh, yeah. They were all about that.
They weren't just making things small, they were tapping into this desire for portable electronics. Think
Yeah.
Walkmans, Discman, those compact cameras. They totally dominated those markets because of it.
But then the article also talks about companies that had valuable resources, but they didn't really keep up with the times.
Right. They failed to adapt.
Like, what was the
Oh, like USX?
USX? Yeah.
Yeah, formerly U.S. Steel. They were so stuck in the old way of making steel, they just didn't adapt fast enough to these new technologies.
And I guess their competitor, Nucor Steel,
Yeah.
they were like way more agile and ended up on top.
Exactly. More adaptable.
So even a historically valuable strength can become a liability if you're not, paying attention to the changing world.
You gotta stay relevant.
So that's value. What's the next question in Barney's framework?
Okay, so now we move on to rareness. It's not enough for a resource to be valuable, it also has to be rare, something your competitors don't have. If everyone's got the same superpower, it's not really a superpower anymore.
Yeah, it's like having a killer recipe, but everyone else is using it too.
Exactly. No one's impressed.
So what's Barney's example for this one?
He talks about Walmart and their early use of point-of-sale data collection.
Oh,
Back then, this is pretty rare, they could track sales and adjust inventory in real time, giving them a huge advantage over competitors like Kmart who were still doing things the old way.
so Walmart was like way ahead of the curve with using data.
Oh yeah, way ahead.
They could like optimize their supply chain, reduce costs, offer products people actually wanted.
They knew what was selling and what wasn't, and they could react instantly.
So we got value and rareness. What's the next hurdle?
Okay, so now we got to ask about imitability. Can competitors easily copy or substitute your valuable and rare resources? If they can, any advantage you have is going to be short-lived.
It's like having a secret recipe, but everyone can figure it out just by, tasting the dish.
Exactly. So the question is, how do companies protect their secret sauce?
How do they keep that edge?
Well, Barney dives into a few reasons why some resources are harder to imitate. First, he talks about the role of history. Think about Caterpillar, the heavy construction equipment company. They got to be so dominant, partly because of World War II.
Wait, Caterpillar in World War II, how are they connected?
So the Allied forces needed a reliable global supplier for construction equipment, and Caterpillar stepped up. They built this incredibly complex global service and supply network with the backing of the Allied governments. It was something that no one else could just replicate, even if they wanted to.
So their past success became this massive advantage, huh?
Oh, yeah, it was huge, almost unassailable. But it's not always about these big historical events. Sometimes it's about the accumulation of lots of small decisions, what Barney calls numerous small decisions. Like he uses the example of the Mailbox Inc.
The mailboxing?
Yeah, they're a bulk mailing company that just consistently outperforms their rivals.
That's their secret.
It's not really a secret. They just execute tons of small details exceptionally well, day after day. Their advantage isn't any one big thing. It's this cumulative effect of doing many small things better than everyone else.
Attention to detail.
Exactly.
Interesting. So we've got history, we've got a bunch of tiny decisions. What's the last piece of this imitability puzzle?
Okay, so this one's a little more intangible. It's the idea of socially complex resources. Things like company culture, reputation, trust, teamwork. Incredibly valuable, but super hard to copy directly. Think of a company like Hewlett-Packard and their famous collaborative culture.
Right, HP. They were known for this amazing teamwork. They could develop all these compatible products across like different categories. You couldn't just copy their products because you wouldn't have that culture that made it all possible.
Exactly. It was more than just the products themselves. And this brings up an interesting paradox that Barney talks about, the case of Sony. We talked about their strength in miniaturization, which was definitely a socially complex resource built over years of expertise and teamwork.
But their competitors eventually caught up, right? They started making similar small electronics.
They did. Individual Sony products, like think the Walkman, were imitated through reverse engineering and things like that. But here's the shift in thinking. Instead of focusing on the lifespan of a single product, look at Sony's performance over time.
So they may not dominate any one market forever,
Right.
but they kept innovating, kept releasing new miniaturized products that leveraged that core competency.
Exactly. They were constantly evolving, staying ahead of the curve.
Always thinking ahead.
Exactly. It's like being a chef who can constantly create new, amazing dishes, even if those recipes eventually get copied. The real advantage is the ability to just keep innovating.
Okay, so we've covered value, rarity, imitability.
Yeah.
What's the final question in Barney's framework for unlocking this competitive potential?
All right, so the final question, it's all about organization. It asks, is the company structured in a way that lets them, really use those valuable, rare, hard to imitate resources?
So it's not enough to just have the strengths. You got to know how to use them right to
Yeah.
really make an impact. What does Barney call this piece?
He talks about complementary resources, things like reporting structures, control systems, compensation policies, the kind of stuff that might not seem like a big deal on its own, but it can really boost the impact of your other strengths.
Makes you think of an orchestra. You could have the best musicians in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't have a conductor to bring it all together,
Yeah.
it's just noise, right? Not music.
Perfect analogy. Think back to Caterpillar, their global dominance. It wasn't just about their network, it was also about their organization.
Mhm.
They had the structure to support their global ambitions, which allowed them to really maximize that wartime advantage.
And Walmart too, right? Their point-of-sale inventory system, that was a game changer.
Huge.
But it was made even more powerful by their organizational structure. They were set up to really take advantage of all that data.
Right. They were ready for it.
But then Barney gives this like cautionary tale with Xerox. Remember Xerox PRs, their research lab?
Oh, yeah. Legendary.
They came up with like the personal computer,
Yeah, the mouse.
the mouse, the laser printer.
They were way ahead of their time.
So innovative.
But their organizational structure really let them down.
Too much red tape.
Too much bureaucracy, yeah. Short-sighted incentive. They just couldn't bring those innovations to market effectively.
So they had all this potential, all these amazing ideas, but they couldn't capitalize on them.
It's a classic example of how even brilliant ideas need the right environment to succeed.
Yeah, the company's got to be a well-oiled machine, all the parts working together.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've unpacked all four of Barney's questions: value, rarity, imitability, and organization. This framework for understanding how internal strengths actually translate into competitive advantage, I love it. But I'm ready for some more real-world examples. What else you got?
Let's talk about the Cola Wars. Coke versus Pepsi. You'd think, with all their marketing power, one of them would have a clear advantage, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the article suggests maybe not.
So how do the cola wars play out when we look at them through these four questions? Let's start with value. Is grabbing market share, is that really a valuable strategy in the soft drink industry?
Absolutely. Market share translates to revenue, to profit. So any strategy focused on increasing market share, yeah, that's definitely valuable.
Okay, so it's valuable. But is it rare? Do Coke or Pepsi, do they have unique advantages when it comes to winning those market share battles?
Here's the thing, they're both marketing giants.
Uh-huh.
Any move one company makes, the other one can pretty much match it right away. So their marketing skills, while definitely valuable, they're not that rare.
It's like this never-ending arms race. They just keep spending more and more on marketing, but no one really wins in the long run.
It's a good point, and the article even brings up this example of Pepsi's Pepsi Challenge campaign. Remember those blind taste tests where people supposedly preferred Pepsi over Coke?
Oh yeah, I remember those. Didn't Pepsi's market share, like, jump after those ads?
It did. They doubled their share in the test market, but here's the thing. They had to slash their prices in half to do it.
Ouch. So they won the battle but lost the war. They gained market share but hurt their profitability.
Yeah, pretty much. Classic case of competitive parity. What's interesting is that Coke and Pepsi, they both seem to be realizing that this endless battle for market share, it might not be worth it.
So are they giving up? Is the Cola War over?
Not quite. They're just shifting strategies. Instead of trying to, out-market each other, they're focusing on different segments, different products, different geographic areas.
So Coke's going after, like, older consumers with Diet Coke, while Pepsi's targeting younger generations.
Right. And Coke's expanding internationally, while Pepsi focuses more on the U.S. market.
They're trying to find ways to stand out that go beyond just, grabbing a bigger slice at the same pie.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like they're both amazing athletes, but maybe one's a sprinter and one's a marathon runner. They each have their own strength.
Okay, so the Cola Wars show us how even in a really intense competition, a different kind of advantage can come out.
Right.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk about another famous product, the Macintosh computer.
The Mac. Known for its user-friendliness, its loyal fans. All right, let's see how this story fits into Barney's framework. First question, value. Was being user-friendly, was that a valuable thing in a computer?
I think it's safe to say that most people, given the choice, would prefer a computer that's easy to use. So yeah, I'd say user-friendliness was definitely valuable.
Okay, and back when the Mac first came out, was that ease of use? Was it rare?
Well, I mean, the alternative was those DOS-based computers,
Right.
which were notoriously, like, clunky and complicated.
Not exactly intuitive.
Yeah, so the Mac's user-friendliness, that was a big differentiator.
Definitely. So it was valuable and rare, which gave Apple at least a temporary competitive advantage. But could other companies copy that user-friendliness? Was it imitable?
That's where it gets interesting, right? Turns out, creating a user-friendly experience like the Mac's, it wasn't as easy as it looked.
No, it wasn't. The article mentions a couple reasons why. First, developing the Mac involved this really integrated team, software, hardware, production engineers, all working together seamlessly at Apple. That kind of close collaboration, that shared vision, it was hard to replicate in other companies that were more, siloed.
So it wasn't just about the technology, it was about the culture, the way they worked.
Exactly. It was a socially complex resource. And second, Apple just had a fundamentally different mindset about computers compared to, say, IBM.
How so?
IBM came from the world of mainframes, these big, complex machines designed for, specialists. User-friendliness wasn't even a consideration. But Apple, they saw computers as tools for everyone, for creativity, even for fun.
Interesting. So their beliefs about what a computer should be that actually shaped the products they created.
Exactly. And those mindsets, those cultures, they were deeply ingrained, really hard to imitate. So for a while, Apple had this real advantage because of the Mac's user-friendliness.
But then, of course, Windows came along, and the whole world of personal computing, it changed.
And with Windows, user-friendliness, it wasn't so rare anymore. Apple had to adapt.
So what did they do?
Well, they recognized that their advantage was shrinking, so they did things like lower the price of the Mac. But they also started looking for new ways to innovate, new resources and capabilities to stay ahead of the game.
I remember they made some kind of surprising partnerships, right? Even with, like, former rivals like IBM.
Yeah, they knew they had to evolve. And those partnerships gave them access to new technologies, new expertise. It's a great lesson. Even companies known for a specific strength, they can't afford to stand still. They have to keep adapting to stay relevant.
So we've seen how the Cola Wars, they highlight this idea of competitive parity.
Right.
And Apple's Macintosh, it shows us how even a strong advantage can fade over time. But you mentioned one more example, a company where an advantage that seemed rock solid eventually crumbled. I'm curious, what company we're talking about?
We're going back to Caterpillar. Remember their global service and supply network, the one they built up during World War II?
Yeah, that gave them, like, a huge advantage for decades.
It did. It seemed like no one could compete with them in that heavy construction equipment market.
Right, that network was, like, impossible to copy. But you're saying even that advantage eventually went away.
Even advantages that come from history, they're not immune to change. Things like globalization, new technologies, competitors like Komatsu, they all started to eat away at Caterpillar's dominance.
So what did Caterpillar do? Did they like try to copy Komatsu's strategy? I know they build these super reliable machines that don't need as much servicing.
They did put a lot of effort into R&D to make their machines better, more durable, but they also realized that their global network, even if it wasn't as unique as it used to be, it was still really valuable.
So they didn't just abandon what made them strong, but they knew they had to like evolve.
Exactly. They started offering these more kind of comprehensive service packages. They were using their global network to give customers not just parts, but like expertise and support for the entire life of their equipment.
So they were more than just a parts supplier. They became like a real partner.
Right. Offering this whole suite of services that went beyond just the physical product.
That's interesting.
And that's a key takeaway from this whole deep dive. Competitive advantage, it's not static, it's dynamic. Companies have to always be looking at their strengths, adapting to change, and coming up with new ways to stay ahead.
It's like surfing. You can't just stand still on the board, right? You have to
Yeah.
constantly be adjusting to stay balanced and ride the wave.
Exactly. Great analogy. And that brings us back to the core of what Barney's saying. Competitive advantage, it's not just about what you have, it's about what you do with it.
It's about understanding the value, the rarity, the imitability, and how you organize around those strengths to create that lasting edge.
And maybe even more importantly, it's about recognizing that the world is always changing. The companies that really thrive are the ones that embrace that change and find new ways to adapt.
So we've got the framework, we've looked at all these different companies. Now it's time to put this knowledge to work.
Think about your own work, your own company. What are your unique strengths, the things that set you apart?
And use Barney's 4 questions to really analyze them. Are they valuable? Are they rare? How easily could someone copy them? And is your company set up to get the most out of them?
Because in a world that's always changing, being able to adapt and find new sources of advantage, that might be the most valuable resource of all.
That's all for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.